What's up, everyone? Today we're diving into some mind-blowing stories where animals didn't just survive human hunters. They completely outsmarted them. We're talking about creatures that would make Sherlock Holmes jealous with their problem-solving skills. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll never look at wildlife the same way again. But before we jump in, here's something that'll blow your mind. Scientists have discovered that some animals can actually predict human behavior better than we can predict theirs. Stick around because the story I'm about to tell you proves this in the most incredible way. The raven's revenge. Let's start with one of the most jaw-dropping cases of animal intelligence I've ever come across. This happened in Alaska, and it involves a bird that literally played chess with a human hunter. Meet Carl, an experienced hunter who thought he had ravens figured out. These birds, he noticed, would always scatter when he approached their territory. Easy pickings for someone who knew their patterns, right? Wrong. Here's where it gets crazy. Carl set up his usual hunting spot and waited, but this time, something different happened. Let's call him Einstein started making specific calls. Not random cawing, but organized pattern-based sounds in the area. Wolves, bears, even a mountain lion showed up like they'd received a personal invitation. Turns out, Einstein had been watching Carl for weeks. He learned that Carl always brought fresh kills to the same spot, essentially called in the cavalry, using different warning calls to attract every dangerous animal in the forest to Carl's location. Carl had to abandon his hunt and literally run for his life. But here's the kicker, and this is what made me realize we're dealing with next-level intelligence. Einstein waited until Carl was completely surrounded before revealing himself, perched on a branch above, almost like he was saying, "Checkmate." The raven had turned Carl from hunter into hunted using pure strategy. But this is just the beginning. The deer that built an army. Now, you might think ravens are just naturally smart birds, so maybe that story isn't too surprising. But wait until you hear about Rosie the deer. Hunters would come with their high-tech equipment, thinking they're going after a simple-minded forest animal. Rosie had other plans. Here's what makes this story absolutely incredible. Rosie figured out the hunter's radio communication. I know what you're thinking. Deer can't understand human language, right? It meant danger was coming. When they whispered, it meant they were close. But Rosie took this intelligence gathering to a whole new level. She started recruiting other deer, radio patterns she'd learned. The result? A coordinated deer resistance movement. Hunters would enter the preserve, confident in their technology and tactics. But instead of finding scattered, confused deer, they encountered something unprecedented. Groups of deer that moved like military units. They had lookouts, escape routes, and even decoy operations. One hunter described it like this. It felt like the deer were 3 steps ahead of us at every turn. They knew where we were going before we did. The preserve had to eventually change their entire hunting program because Rosie and her crew made traditional hunting impossible. But the question that kept bothering everyone was, how did one deer become so strategic? The answer will shock you. The elephant's long game. Before I tell you Rosie's secret, let me share a story that'll completely change how you think about animal memory and planning. This happened in Africa with an elephant named Tembo. Now, elephants are known for their memory, but what Tembo did goes beyond anything scientists thought possible. A trophy hunter named Marcus had been tracking Tembo for 3 years. This wasn't just any elephant. Tembo had massive tusks that made him a prime target. Marcus knew Tembo's routes, his water sources, everything. Or so he thought. Here's where it gets absolutely wild. Tembo had been studying Marcus too. For 3 entire years, this elephant was playing the longest game of cat and mouse in history. Tembo learned Marcus's patterns down to the smallest detail. He knew Marcus always approached from downwind. He knew Marcus preferred morning hunts. He even figured out that Marcus used specific camping spots. So Tembo started leaving false trails. He'd deliberately step in mud, break branches, and create fake paths that led nowhere. But here's the genius part. He made these false trails look natural, like he was just going about his daily routine. Marcus followed these trails for months, always finding fresh signs, but never finding Tembo. It was like chasing a ghost. But Tembo's masterpiece was still coming. On the day Marcus finally thought he had Tembo cornered, the elephant revealed his true plan. Marcus found himself not face to face with one elephant, but with an entire herd. Tembo had been leading Marcus straight into a trap. But this wasn't just about numbers. Tembo had positioned the herd strategically. Marcus was surrounded with no escape route, facing 30 angry elephants who were clearly not happy about his hunting intentions. Marcus barely made it out alive. He later said it was like the elephants had been planning this confrontation for years. Which, as it turns out, they probably were. The intelligence network, 9-11 minutes. Now back to Rosie's secret. Remember how she seemed to understand radio communications and taught other deer military-style tactics? Researchers who studied the preserve made an incredible discovery. Rosie hadn't just learned to interpret human behavior. She'd created an intelligence network. Those random deer movements weren't random at all. Different deer had different jobs. Some were scouts who would position themselves near hunter entry points. Others were messengers who could relay information across the preserve using specific body language and positioning. The most mind-blowing part? They found evidence that this network extended beyond the preserve. Deer from neighboring areas were somehow connected to Rosie's system, sharing information about hunter movements across a region spanning hundreds of miles. Think about this for a second. While humans were using radios and GPS technology, deer were operating their own communication network that was arguably more effective. But here's what really gets me. All of these stories have something in common that reveals a truth most people never realize: the pattern. Every single one of these animals did something that scientists used to think was impossible. They didn't just react to immediate threats. They planned for future encounters. Einstein the raven studied human behavior and developed a strategy. Rosie built a communication system and trained others. Tembo played a 3-year-long strategic game. This isn't just intelligence. This is what psychologists call theory of mind. The ability to understand that other beings have thoughts, plans, and intentions different from your own. So let me ask you this: who's really the apex predator here? The humans with all their technology, or the animals who can outsmart that technology using pure intelligence? And if this story completely changed how you see animal intelligence like it did for me, smash that like button and subscribe for more mind-blowing stories that'll make you question everything you thought you knew about the natural world. Until next time, stay curious, and remember, in nature, the smartest species isn't always the one with the biggest brain.